The fluorescent lights hummed softly in the empty laundromat, casting their pale glow across rows of silent washing machines. It was nearly midnight, and the city outside had grown quiet, save for the occasional car passing by on the wet streets. The air smelled faintly of detergent and fabric softener, a clean, comforting scent that seemed to wrap around the small space like a warm blanket. Michael Harrison sat on the hard plastic bench, his expensive suit feeling oddly out of place in this humble corner of the neighborhood. He had removed his tie hours ago, letting it hang loosely around his neck, and his usually perfectly styled dark hair was slightly disheveled. To anyone who might have seen him, he looked like just another tired businessman doing his laundry late at night. But Michael Harrison was not just any businessman. He was the CEO of Harrison Industries, a company worth billions, with offices in 12 countries and thousands of employees. Tonight, however, none of that mattered. Tonight, he was simply a man who couldn't sleep, who had wandered the streets of the city until he found himself in this quiet laundromat, seeking solace in the rhythmic spinning of washing machines. The heavy glass door opened with a soft chime, and a young woman stepped inside. She moved carefully, as if trying not to disturb the peaceful silence. Her blonde hair caught the harsh lighting, and she wore a simple white t-shirt with what appeared to be a photo printed on it, paired with a dark skirt. In her hands she carried a small blue suitcase that looked worn from years of use. Michael glanced up briefly, then returned his attention to his phone, scrolling through endless emails that could wait until morning. He had learned over the years to blend into the background when he wanted to be alone. It was a skill that served him well during these late-night wanderings through the city he governed from his glass tower. The woman chose a washing machine several feet away from him and began loading her clothes with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this countless times. The silence stretched between them, comfortable and unbroken, like two strangers sharing a moment of solitude. Then, as she reached into her pocket for quarters, something fell to the floor with a soft rustling sound. Michael looked over to see a piece of paper lying on the linoleum, and the woman staring down at it with an expression of such profound sadness that it made his chest tighten. She bent down slowly, picking up what appeared to be a medical bill. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it, and Michael could see her shoulders begin to shake. The sound that escaped her lips was barely audible, but in the quiet of the laundromat, it might as well have been a scream Sarah Mitchell had been holding back tears for 3 weeks now. 3 weeks since her younger brother Tommy had been rushed to the emergency room with severe pneumonia. 3 weeks since she had sat in that sterile waiting room, praying to anyone who might be listening that her baby brother would be okay. Tommy was fine now, thank God, but the hospital bill in her hands told a different story. $12,000. $12,000 that she didn't have, had never had, and couldn't imagine ever having. She worked as a night shift cleaner at several office buildings downtown, moving from one to the next like a ghost in the empty corridors, making barely enough to cover rent and groceries. The tears came then, silent and steady, falling onto the paper and smearing the ink slightly. She had been so careful, so strong, holding everything together for Tommy's sake. But here, in this empty laundromat at midnight, surrounded by the gentle hum of machines, she finally allowed herself to break. Michael watched her cry, and something deep in his chest began to ache. He had seen tears before, in boardrooms and offices, usually from employees he was forced to let go during difficult times. But those tears had always felt distant, removed from his daily reality. These tears, however, felt immediate and raw, and they stirred something in him that had been dormant for far too long. He stood up slowly, his expensive leather shoes silent on the worn floor, and approached her with the careful movements of someone approaching a wounded animal. "Excuse me," he said softly, his voice gentle in the quiet space. "Are you all right?" Sarah looked up, her eyes red and puffy, embarrassed to be seen in such a vulnerable state by a stranger. She wiped her face quickly with the back of her hand and tried to smile, but it came out watery and unconvincing. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to disturb you." "I'll be quiet." "You're not disturbing me," Michael said, and he meant it. He gestured to the bench where he had been sitting. Would you like to sit down? Sometimes it helps to talk. Sarah hesitated, studying this well-dressed stranger who spoke with such kindness. There was something about his eyes, something gentle and understanding, that made her feel safe. She nodded and walked over to the bench, sitting down heavily as if the weight of her troubles had finally become too much to carry. "It's my brother," she said after a long moment, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's only 17 and he got really sick. The doctor saved him, but ... She held up the bill, her hands still trembling. "I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. I work 3 cleaning jobs and I can barely keep us afloat as it is." Michael felt something shift inside his chest, a crack in the wall he had built around his heart over years of corporate decisions and bottom-line thinking. This young woman, probably not much older than 25, was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Sarah," she replied, glancing at him sideways. "Sarah Mitchell." "I'm Michael," he said, and for the first time in years, he introduced himself without his title, without the weight of his position. Just Michael, sitting on a plastic bench in a laundromat, talking to someone who needed a friend. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the washing machines cycle through their programs. Sarah found herself relaxing slightly, surprised by how easy it was to talk to this stranger who had appeared in her darkest moment like some kind of guardian angel. "You know," Michael said eventually, "I used to come to places like this with my mother when I was young. She worked 2 jobs to keep us going after my father left. I remember sitting on benches just like this one, watching her fold our clothes with such care, making sure everything was perfect even though we had so little." Sarah looked at him with new interest. There was something in his voice, a depth of understanding that spoke of shared experience. "What happened to her?" "She passed away 5 years ago," Michael said quietly. "Cancer. The medical bills nearly broke us, even though I was doing well by then. I can't imagine facing something like that when you're already struggling just to survive." The honesty in his voice made Sarah's chest tighten with empathy. Here was this well-dressed man who seemed so put together, and he understood exactly what she was going through. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Thank you," Michael replied. "But I want you to know that things can change, Sarah. Sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his business card, but as he handed it to her, he realized it would reveal everything. "Michael Harrison, CEO, Harrison Industries?" The same company whose building she cleaned every Tuesday and Friday night, moving silently through the executive floors while he worked late. In his corner office, Sarah took the card and read it, her eyes widening with shock. She looked up at him, then back at the card, then up at him again. "You single quotes read ... She started, but the words caught in her throat. "I'm someone who knows what it's like to worry about people you love," Michael said simply. "And I'm someone who believes that when you have the power to help, you should." The next morning, Sarah Mitchell received a call from the hospital's billing department. The entire balance had been paid in full by an anonymous donor. But that wasn't all. A week later, she received an offer for a position in Harrison Industries' administrative department, with full health benefits and a salary that would allow her and Tommy to build a real life together. Michael never acknowledged what he had done. But every Tuesday and Friday, when Sarah worked late in the building, she would see the light on in the corner office and smile. Sometimes the most extraordinary changes come from the most ordinary moments, when 2 people simply choose to see each other as human beings worthy of kindness and compassion. In a world that often felt cold and disconnected, their brief encounter in that fluorescent-lit laundromat had reminded them both that there was still goodness to be found, still hope to be shared, and still reasons to believe in the fundamental decency of the human heart.